Well, let me bring this guy up then, because listen, if we're talking upside, you're Mr. Upside wins championship, Scott. Guru, you're Mr. Young Ascending Talent. Well, it's all there for one Achane in the second round.
Yeah, so I'm high on him, but I don't know how high on him I am. I've had him at one point as high as RB5 in my rankings. I think right now he's RB8, but I've just been moving that around nonstop since my article, since before my article dropped. And so, yeah, I'm the upside guy, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm also the inventor.
The bell cow guy.
I'm the bell cow guy, the inventor of weighted opportunity. And so it's tricky. You have this player who had the most efficient rookie season, not just rookie season, the most efficient season ever.
Yeah, I mean, not to whittle this down to just bare minimum basics, but I just don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling drafting guys at like 25 overall who are big play dependent, even if they are at running back, even if they are the best big play backs in the damn league. It just seems a bit much.
I do have one stat for you, and this was the stat that like really kind of, I think this is right. I tweeted this out and immediately moved him all the way up to RB5. I've since moved him down, but when both running backs are healthy and on the field,
right?
Jahmyr Gibbs versus Achane, 11.8 carries to 11.7 carries per game, 4.2 to 4.2 targets per game, 3.8 red zone opportunities to 3.8 red zone opportunities per game. So, this was a committee backfield for Gibbs too, that everyone's excited about. They're all excited about pass catching potential too. But again, I think he's tricky. He's one of the trickiest players in all of drafts right now. What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Let's talk a little bit about the guys you do love, being, Jordan Love is a guy who you've been high on. You called the summer of love. And in Chicago, the number one overall pick, Caleb Williams, he's already showing out this year. You got him in your rankings, John's redraft rankings at the site. If you just want his top 12, he's got Caleb Williams at number 11 right now. So you got him as a starting fantasy QB. So let's talk a little bit about Jordan Love here. Why do you love him so much?
Well, I mean, we were just talking off the air 2 years ago. I think I was a big Joe Burrow guy coming out, and I'm like, all right, guys, let's not overcomplicate this. Joe Burrow is like 7th round pick. We all know he's good. Maybe we probably have a little bit more confidence in Burrow compared to Love right now. But to me, they're kind of the same guy. Very physically gifted. I mean, you could argue Love's a little bit more physically gifted than Burrow, certainly. Maybe Burrow a little bit more cerebral, but they're studs. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. They fit my prototype. I like guys who win from the pocket, distribute the ball out there like a point guard, and then, when we need it, you'll run 50 times a year, let's say. And, maybe the touchdowns are a little fluky, but that year I loved Burrow. I think he had 5 on the ground. Love last year, I was high on him. He had 4. So we love the receiving core. I love the continuity with Matt LaFleur. I think they do a good job of getting scheming guys open. I think it's a pretty damn good scheme. It's hard to argue with the results. The depth of the receiver is amazing. And just as I hate to keep pointing out this damn video, but I did this long form video last summer on our channel on Jordan Love, added up all the pros and the cons. Honestly, the bigger factor was the schedule. I'm like, look at this schedule, and boom, it was good, really good. Well, guess what? This year's schedule is also good. They got Philly to open. That could be a good matchup. Indy at Tennessee, against Minnesota, the Rams, Cardinals. Houston's D is good. Jacksonville ahead of their Week 10 bye. That to me looks like a good start, and that's one of my lessons. I know it's almost kind of regressing in terms of the knowledge. Like, I'm reverting to strength of schedule analysis, but I think it's important these days when you're looking for an edge, because it's hard to find an edge these days, especially when guys don't play much in the preseason.
So Jordan Love isn't one of my guys, but I get it. I just had Sean Siegel on my podcast, School of Scott, and he said Jordan Love was his must-draft quarterback. And so I dove deeper into it. I got some dank stats for you. You brought up the strength of schedule. I do a big series every year on the strength of schedule. I think I do it better than everyone else. He has the league's the position's most improved strength of schedule. It's worth in real terms nearly a full fantasy point per game more than what he averaged last year. That's how good it is. And what did he do last year? He ranked 5th among all quarterbacks in fantasy points per start. He got better as the season went along. He hit at least 17.5 fantasy points, 8 of his last 9 games, averaged 21.2. That was with Christian Watson missing a bunch of time, Luke Musgrave missing time, Jayden Reed being banged up. Over that latter stretch, top 6 in fantasy points per dropback. Week 11 on, here it is. 1st in touchdowns, 1st in passing yards, 1st in EPA per attempt, lowest sack to interception ratio, best touchdown and interception. The list goes on and on and on. The guy just, if you just want to say, hey, we saw it, the guy's already a superstar. Why isn't he being drafted like it? He's being drafted as the QB 10, QB 11.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a QB1 last year all along. We just didn't know it. And for the detractors who point to that little lull he had, what was that, starting around week 4 or 5, and it was like a month-long lull. And look, even I was like, uh-oh. But guess what? He fought his way through it and played his way through it, which to me, forget about the fact that he had that lull. Patrick Mahomes had a freaking lull a couple of years ago. He did the same thing. They adjusted with the 2 high safeties. He fought his way through it. I feel like that's exactly what Jordan Love did. And now it's just a steady ascension, I believe, will continue. I don't even think we've seen the best of Jordan Love just yet.
Yeah, if you play around with the data suite and you look at that rough early season stretch where that you're talking about, the offense transformed dramatically. You know, they were taking all these deep shots to Christian Watson with his gimpy hamstring, and it wasn't working.
Right.
And then they just reduced the ADOT. Had this wide receiver platoon, and they had an answer to the 2 high coverage, and it just clearly worked. And they stuck with that. And so I don't see them going back. I think it's just they found out what works best for Jordan Love, but there's even the potential that, hey, you add a healthy Christian Watson to the mix, you bring back that deep game. There's potential for even more than what he showed us at the tail end of last season, where like very few quarterbacks in fantasy could compete with that.
Yeah. What I love about Jordan Love too, is you can get him so late. I'm looking at the ADP on our site now. He's like an end of the 7th, early 8th round pick. So you can just let the guys in your home league go and select Josh Allen in the 2nd, 3rd round, Jalen Hurts. And this is going to spin us, Scott, into something you talked about in your Anatomy of a League Winner column is, waiting on the quarterback. And you say you can almost wait and be like the last guy in your league. And historically it's shown you can still win your league with that, because we know home leaguers, they want to get that edge. Maybe there's some guys who aren't too sharp in your league, but they know the names of the quarterback. They know who Patrick Mahomes is. They know who Josh Allen is. And at the right price, if those guys fall, I'm all for drafting Josh Allen. I just took him in the 5th round at a Kings Classic last weekend. That's a 14-team league, but he fell past ADP, so it was a good get.
Wow.
Now, what do you think about, with these home leagues and just saying, screw it, wait. And then I know you got a guy you love in Jayden Daniels if you wait long enough in these home leagues.
Yeah. So I just want to say you have my permission to draft a Josh Allen or maybe even Jalen Hurts, who ranks higher than Allen in our fantasy point per game projections this year. That might be because projections are Chris Wecht is an Eagles fan. He promises me it's not, but that is the case. I'll say in a 10-team league, that might even be optimal. Probably not. That's not what I do, but you have my permission to go that route. And if you read my draft plan or John's draft plan or both, we're going to give you enough league winners in the middle rounds to more than make up for that. Allen obviously outscored the next closest quarterback by over 2 fantasy points per game. He's finished first in fantasy points per game in each of the last 3 seasons. So that's highest end production. It's predictable production. You have my permission, but I'm not going that route for the reasons outlined in Anatomy of a League Winner. 1, it's opportunity cost. 2, it's just really not that impactful of a position. The quarterback position is the deepest. It is the least scarce. It has the most parity. Even when you do hit on a late round league winner, it's really not that impactful. Like Lamar Jackson, one of my all-time calls, was betting him to win MVP that year, was all in. He really didn't move the needle in the way that some of the other wide receivers and running backs did. But what I do, or I should go on too, is like, don't underestimate your floor in these leagues. Like, even if you literally draft 0 quarterbacks, you're going to be fine. And I know that sounds insane to people, but you're going to be fine. Like, look at streaming results. So JJ Zacharyson, who gave me my start in the fantasy football industry, he has this podcast called Living the Stream, where he gives out a different streaming quarterback recommendation. So it's any quarterback below a 50% rostership rate. He just picks the best one each week based on matchup, and you can't hold anyone over 50%. And just his results since 2015, QB8, QB6, QB6, QB10, QB7, QB15, QB12, QB9, QB13. So at worst, fringe QB1 production, but more often than not, mid to low end QB1 production. And he's putting himself at an inherent disadvantage. He's not allowing himself to hold on to one of these guys who like establishes themselves. Like, he could have, theoretically, or streamers could have picked up Jordan Love in week 10, where he was owned in only like 40% of leagues. From week 10 on, overall QB3, or Joe Flacco in week 13, he was QB2 across the final 4 weeks of the fantasy season. And you see this every year. You see these UDFA tier quarterbacks break out, put up mid to low end QB1 production, or again, you could just stream. So your floor is massively high. So I don't go the early quarterback route. What I typically do is just every year I have my cheap league winner, and like, no surprise, it's almost always a young guy who runs. That was, 2019 Lamar Jackson. It was Jalen Hurts a year or two after that. It was Justin Fields after that. Last year was Anthony Richardson. I think that was a good process. Didn't work out due to injuries, but this year it's Jayden Daniels, and I just feel so good about it. QB 11 to 13 ADP on every major site, including the sharp ones, including like FFPC. He's just going so late on Yahoo and NFL and ESPN, where you see this lull. So like, teams will draft their first 11 quarterbacks, and then there's typically like a 3-round lull because, they know better than to start drafting backups. And so he's going in that lull. So you could reach multiple rounds and he's going to pay off that ADP. Why do I love him? Again, he runs. He was awesome in college. He averaged 40 fantasy points per game last year in his Heisman winning season. That ranks second best of any Power 5 quarterback since 2016. Fantasy points per dropback, same thing, second best since 2014. He's in the perfect offense. Cliff Kingsbury's fast-paced, up-tempo offense is going to rank top 3 in plays per game, maybe top 3 in dropbacks per game. He's not afraid to let his quarterbacks run wild. Kyler Murray averaged 25.8 fantasy points per game, 8.3 rushing attempts per game in 2020. And it's just like a perfect storm where, like, even if he's terrible, he's going to be awesome for fantasy. We saw Justin Fields, right? But here's the thing. I think he's going to be awesome. And he runs, and he's in the perfect offense. So this is my Exodia quarterback this year. This is my all-in guy. This is my must-draft guy. John, I know we've butted heads on some of these Konami quarterbacks over the years, but I feel really good about this one.
I also am very high on Jayden Daniels. I'm in year 30 here. I'm pulling in 3 decades of quarterback evaluations. Obviously, things have evolved. I've been here for the entirety of that with the second reaction quarterbacks and all that. I think he is a very, very good prospect. And look, he's already showed it in the preseason. The dime he dropped to Diami Brown in the opener, the touchdown scamper was certainly easy. Showed well in the second one. But I like Caleb Williams more. I have Daniels at QB 12, which is not well, but over the market. I have Caleb, though, at QB 11. And let's just compare and contrast. Let me outline my concerns. Number one, good point about Cliff Kingsbury. It's a heavily schemed offense where it's seemingly pretty simplistic. And just kind of plug a guy in there and it's all right. But I started calling him fall off a cliff Kingsbury because the offenses do tend to tail off. I think we've got, as the season progresses, I think we've got serious pass protection issues here in DC. And certainly Jayden Daniels protected himself pretty well in the preseason, but let's be real. When the bullets are flying for real for all 4 quarters in a tight game, he's going to probably take off and run. We all know that. Maybe as a last resort, but he puts his body at big-time risk. The receiving core is – and look, my takeaway from coming out of this weekend and over the last 7 days to 10 is I'm drafting Terry McLaurin because my man is going to get peppered with targets because I thought Juwan Johnson – was going to be, back in business this year. Well, we're almost out of business based on the way everything's going. So, I mean, maybe Diami Brown's a nice sleeper nowadays, but look at this. Dotson, Zacchaeus, Jamison Crowder, Diami, Luke McCaffrey made a play I just saw watching the game back. It's a little scary. I think Ben Sinnott has shown well, but look, he's just a rookie. I don't know how much we can count on him. I'm sure Zach Ertz will be leading the way. He'll probably be the tight end 9 after week 4, getting the ball from Daniels. But, and then the running game isn't all that great either, obviously. So I think there's a fair amount, Scott, that can go wrong compared to what we're seeing from Caleb Williams here. It's good. He fought his way through a couple of, so-so series in the second preseason game, made a really great off script type of play, but seems like he's reading the field pretty well. Body language is unbelievable. You know me, I've been talking about this forever. Justin Fields' body language from day one, and I started talking about it the rookie year in the preseason. I'm like, this is awful. Caleb Williams, polar opposite. Good vibes, all that stuff. I just think Caleb Scott is safer than Jayden Daniels.
I mean, that might be true. To me, it's the same thing I did arguing Lamar in 2019 or Justin Fields 2 years ago, where like you have all these concerns. Well, what about the receiving core? Yeah, the receiving core in Washington looks rough. Yeah. Or what about this? My answer to all those always is it doesn't matter if he runs. Right. And he's going to run. And so everything on top of that is just gravy. But I'm with you too. I like Caleb Williams a lot. It looks like an impossible to fail situation. They might have the best wide receiver trio in football. And then on top of it, he's supposed to be this generational talent. And watching the preseason, he looks the part.
He does.
And so absolutely could be the case. Like, what really is the difference this year between him and CJ Stroud? Amazing weapons. It's
I'll take Caleb Williams over Stroud 10 times out of 10.
Whoa, okay.
At their ADPs, I'll do it every time.
Okay, right. And so it's just we haven't seen it yet with Caleb, but who was the more pedigreed prospect coming out? It was Caleb. So, and he runs too, by the way. Don't underestimate that. He's a little bit of a runner. So
big time.
I definitely get it. Jayden Daniels is my all-in guy, but you keep naming a bunch of quarterbacks I am high on.
Listen, it's fantasy football. I've said this for years. The lifeblood of fantasy football is the running back position. It's the greatest currency that you'll ever have, even in terms of trades. Everybody in a home league, and if you're listening to this, you're probably a big home league player. You need running backs, okay? Scott's article, his draft plan, he talks about, listen, first 3 picks at a draft, he's fine with going CMC, Bijan, Brees. John in his draft plan talks about the running backs that he likes. And he even goes a little further in the first round with guys like Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. So, guys, I did a draft, 14-teamer last week. I just referenced it. I had the 102. I took Bijan Robinson at the 102. Passed on CD, passed on, Tyreek, all those guys. And I said, no, I want Bijan. I think he's going to be next year's 101. So why don't I just draft him now before he has the big breakout season in Atlanta? And so, Scott, let's start with you a little bit on, hey, don't be afraid to take one of these 3 guys in the top 3 picks of your draft. Why do you want people to set the rosters up that way?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about the shifting landscape, the shifting running back landscape, how the running back position is now more devalued now than ever before. It's there's the rise of the committee backfields. There's a decline in running back talent where recent running back draft classes have really been overshadowed by the wide receivers. There's a scarcity of bell cow running backs. But all this does is it just further enhances the value of these top 3 running backs with quote unquote legendary upside, the potential to break leagues. Running back is far and away, highest end running backs are far and away the most valuable commodity in fantasy football. You saw that last year. Teams that had Christian McCaffrey made it to the finals on ESPN 59% of the time. That was more than double the next closest round one pick. And so that's what I'm doing is, the top 3 players in the draft for me are all running backs. I have it a little differently than you. I have it Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and then Bijan Robinson, but still that's where I have it. I think you could win with either approach. If you wanted to gravitate towards the safety of wide receivers, I think I'll have enough mid to late round values for you that you can win either way. But that is my preferred route to go. And luckily on a lot of these sites is you are seeing that third running back fall to the 6th spot or the 7th spot. But if I do go this route, I am generally waiting a bit more on my RB2. I'm probably not taking a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Right. Yeah, my take, as we've discussed here on the pod, but we can certainly reiterate it, and it's somewhat fluid. But number one, every year is different. I haven't been into the running backs, especially last year. Last year was my 29th year in this business, and by far the least interested I've ever been in running back in the entire 29-year run there. I'm kind of back this year because last year Breece Hall was coming off the ACL. Bijan was a rookie for Farty Smith. Gibbs was relatively unproven. Of course, obviously he had not played. And of course, Jonathan Taylor was in the middle of an epic holdout. So I'm like, yeah, no, screw this. I almost cursed there with the F-bomb, but no, I didn't. But this year we have 4 very appealing options in these 4: JT, Gibbs, Breece, and Bijan. And yeah, to Scott's point, like they stand out big time because they're like, maybe not Gibbs, but they're bell cow guys, man, big time. And Gibbs, I'll make an exception because he's in such a great situation there for the Lions. I know they've got Dave Montgomery and all that, but I'm still in with Jahmyr Gibbs. I also think that the elite wide receiver group is smaller this year. Lamb, Hill, Chase. I mean, they're obviously hard to pass up. Jefferson, I think we've got some issues here. Amon-Ra, look, he's very, very good. AJ Brown and Garrett Wilson are, I don't know, they're good, but Garrett Wilson, let's say him, Aaron Rodgers goes down again, we're screwed again. So, I don't think there's as much appeal, whereas I think we're all looking at this sweet spot of wide receivers. And by the way, running back just completely falls off a cliff. The sweet spot of wide receivers, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, 6th round, even 7th, it keeps going really, but it's a really, really good spot here. So adding it all up, I'm back in on running back. I will even say, guys, too, like I am a little bit more about balance this year. I'm even into because Jordan Love, thanks to Jordan Love, he's my number 1 target. I know I can wait a little bit, longer than most. I might even take that 2nd running back in round 5. And Kenneth Walker, to me, is a really, really good one. But let me just circle back real quick. As I did that drafting from 1, drafting from 3 exercise, the only thing that gave me pause was I actually like Derrick Henry this year. And I do think he'll deliver very good results. So I found myself if I'm picking, let's say at 2, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go Tyreek here or 3, whatever, because I feel pretty good that I'll get Derrick Henry back. And I do like that start. I'm not trying to contradict myself, but for me, let's just say it this way. Once Lamb, Hill, and Chase are off the board, I am all about these 4 running backs that I call the flawless 4. And hopefully I'm not cursing them by calling them the flawless floor, but they're all relatively young, relatively durable, and very versatile. So that's what I'm looking for.
I'm surprised to hear you say you're in on Derrick Henry because I am, but I've been getting beaten up by Ryan Heath. You were forever always, the premier ageist in the industry. And now maybe Ryan Heath has picked up that mantle.
Yeah.
Check out his column on age curves, but yeah, he should be on trial for elder verbal abuse and ageism. He's attacked me every step of the way, but I love Derrick Henry. I think I could see him getting 18 rushing touchdowns easily. He led the league in carries last year, had really good efficiency. He was a productive fantasy option despite being playing only 53% of the snaps, being on one of the worst offenses in football. His archetype is someone who really needs positive game script. Guess what? You're going to the team that had the best and the most positive game script last year, that loves to pound the rock, especially inside the red zone. Having Lamar Jackson there is such an efficiency cheat code. Baltimore's ranked top 2 in running back yards per carry every season. Lamar has been there with scrubs, with backups, because J.K. Dobbins can't stay healthy. Gus Edwards can't stay healthy. Yep. And so, yeah, I could see him being a superstar this year, especially in half-point PPR or standard leagues.
And the one word that I'll use to explain away my Derrick Henry take, it also explains away my bad overall take on Derrick Henry. I hated Derrick Henry coming out. Granted, I was correct for a couple of years, but very incorrect. And I could say the same thing about Austin Eckler, which sounds damning to me, but guess what? One word describes both players: outliers. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm was wrong, basically, because they were major outliers. They're just different. Like Derrick Henry, I always say, can I take my running back and plop him in NFL football in 1988 and be fine? That's absolutely the case with Derrick Henry. For what it's worth, a guy like Najee Harris, I know he's boring, but that guy's available. Derrick Henry's available. You know what I mean? He's just a different cat. Like, I'm not worried. Any other running back, almost, I'm worried about the age and it falling off a cliff. But Derrick Henry's just different. He's just a different cat.
It was rough for me in 2019, 2020. I was like, yeah, sorry, I just don't draft running backs this early when they don't catch passes. And it just didn't matter for Derrick Henry, who's one of the best pure runners in NFL history, clearly.
Well, let me bring this guy up then, because listen, if we're talking upside, you're Mr. Upside wins championship, Scott. Guru, you're Mr. Young Ascending Talent. Well, it's all there for one Devon Achane in the second round. But you want to talk about availability. Thy name is not Devon Achane. I mean, you look at, didn't play in week 1, missed weeks 6 through 9, actually 6 through 12, because they had a bye, and then he playing hokey pokey the lineup, and he's back in 11. He's out in 12. But these monster weeks are so tantalizing. The guy averaged 17.3 points in a PPR. We know the offense is pretty condensed. It's 2 guys who are just getting the ball in the backfield. They don't throw the ball that many guys. Now they're splitting them out wide a little bit. If I'm looking at upside in the second round, and Scott, let's throw this to you. I'm like, wow, this guy has like game-breaking talent. I'm just scared to death that he's only going to play 6 weeks out of the season because he's a fragile guy. I remember he was small when I saw the highlights of him coming out of A&M. So like, boy, do I want to pull the trigger on him? Yes. But like, I've got major reservations pulling me away from Devon Achane. Like, pull me off the ledge or push me over. Which way are you taking me here with Achane?
Yeah. So I'm high on him, but I don't know how high on him I am. I've had him at one point as high as RB5 in my rankings. I think right now he's RB8, but I've just been moving that around nonstop since my article, since before my article dropped. And so, yeah, I'm the upside guy, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm also the inventor.
The bell cow guy.
I'm the bell cow guy, the inventor of weighted opportunity. And so it's tricky. You have this player who had the most efficient rookie season, not just rookie season, the most efficient season ever. Absolutely insane what he was capable of doing. You do worry about the BMI, the ability to stay healthy. The counter argument to that is that he bulked up this year, this offseason. It was the first time he was ever able to bulk up, because don't forget, he was a track star in college. So he was never able to focus fully on football. So he hit the weight room, he bulked up. His conditioning is supposedly amazing. But then you have Mike McDaniel, who is always a running back by committee guy, sometimes brutal 3-way committee backfields, even when you have a Raheem Mostert in his prime leading the league in yards per carry. But pre-draft, my guy, Danny Kelly, who of The Ringer, who I think is one of the best running back film evaluators out there, told me pre-draft, this is the Tyreek Hill of running backs. He has the potential to break the game. And then we both concluded, may God have mercy on our souls if he lands in Miami. He lands in Miami. Miami's best beat writer, Trey Wingfield, I think that's his name, was on his podcast, said something to the effect of, this is a superstar. This is the next Christian McCaffrey. I haven't seen anyone like this outside of Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to be there's a chance he could be Miami's number 3 receiver this year. If you look at AS, which I don't want to dive too deep in the details, but we got some really cool
we look at
separation data
Love
coming out on Fantasy Points data very soon. Elite by separation data led the position in usage from the slot, 33% for him. No one else was over 22.5%. And all these different factors is just like, I think he could break leagues. Like, he may only need 15 touches per game to be the overall RB1. And it's like, why wouldn't he get more than that? And just that tantalizing potential is so insane, and why I've just been, running myself in circles. But yes, ultimately am high on him, but I do fully get the concerns.
Yeah. I mean, not to whittle this down to just bare minimum basics, but I just don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling drafting guys at like 25 overall who are big play dependent, even if they are at running back, even if they are the best big play backs in the damn league. It just seems a bit much. I'm looking right now. I've got Achane with 5.2 yards a carry on basically 10 carries a game, 180 touches. I'm baking in some time missed. I think that's fair. 14 games played, so 3 games missed. It's just the numbers just don't add up for me when I work in other volume type guys that I'm not even that high on as players. Isaiah Pacheco, for example, the aforementioned Derrick Henry, my guy Rachaad White. It's hard. I'm not even that into White this year, but I am giving him 300 touches. Even though maybe Bucky Irving has something to say about that and gets a little bit of a role. I still think Rachaad gets 300 touches. It's hard to compete with 300 touches. You got to rip off a long run almost every week, which is kind of what he did last year. So it's a little scary, but the other elements are the availability concerns. I generally don't like running backs gaining weight, although it seems to be doing better lately with that. Like the aforementioned Rachaad White last year told me he gained weight in an effort, muscle weight, to withstand the pounding, and that kind of worked. Mm-hmm. We also have Jalen Wright, and again, not to suffer paralysis by overanalysis, because if you're good, you're good. Achane's good, he's going to be out there and all that, but man, Jalen Wright does look pretty darn good. So you got to bake that in a little bit, that McDaniel may start working him into the mix and making that a 3-headed monster.
Yeah, and preseason usage wasn't super encouraging. You did see him line up out wide and make a sick catch, but he was playing deep into that game with the second string offense. Really seemed like Raheem Mostert was the clear RB1, which is also what McDaniel has said. He said a month or two ago, he said it all starts with Raheem as our lead back. That's not encouraging. I do have one stat for you, and this was the stat that like really kind of, I think this is right. I tweeted this out and immediately moved him all the way up to RB5. I've since moved him down, but check this out. So Jahmyr Gibbs, once David Montgomery returned in week 10 throughout the remainder of the season, versus Achane in games Mostert played and Achane played at least 7 snaps, right? Okay. Right. So it's just like when both running backs are healthy and on the field.
Right.
Jahmyr Gibbs versus Achane, 11.8 carries to 11.7 carries per game, 4.2 to 4.2 targets per game, 3.8 red zone opportunities to 3.8 red zone opportunities per game. So, this was a committee backfield for Gibbs too, that everyone's excited about. They're all excited about pass catching potential too, but the volume at the end of the day wasn't too different, because, Miami loves to pound that rock. But who's the more efficient option too on a per touch basis? But again, I think he's tricky. He's one of the trickiest players in all of drafts right now.
Well, what it leads back to is we used to have this thing in fantasy called the dead zone, right? And we would all do podcasts about it and go, you can't draft running backs from rounds I don't know, whatever it is, 4 to 6 and blah, 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 blah. I think that dead zone has really shifted a lot later. Maybe it's just the way that ADP has fallen, but I think there's some good values in that, 4th, 5th, 6th round at running back. Say you do what we said earlier in the draft. You take a running back early in the first, then let's hit a couple of receivers. Boom, boom, 2nd, 3rd round. You can come back later. You just mentioned Raheem Mostert. You just mentioned David Montgomery. Who else is in there? Javonte Williams, Devin Singletary. I think some of these guys are really good RB2 options that you can get later on that you don't have to start maybe a draft RB. I want to talk a little bit about this middle round dead zone or not. Like, I think if you go later on into the 70s and 80s and you're looking at the Zamir Whites of the world and, guys like that, Zeke Elliott, Gus Edwards, I don't want anything to do with them. But what do you guys feel about that kind of 4th, 5th, 6th round guys you're going to select as your RB2, John?
Well, I think it's kind of a dead zone for me in the 3rd round for what it's worth. Josh Jacobs, Pacheco, not that into even my guy Rachaad White, although he's got his early 4th. I do like James Cook, although he's not cheap in the 4th. I mentioned Ken Walker. Was not into Ken Walker last year, but he fits my criteria basically, barely. He's young. He's generally durable. Maybe I'm stretching it there. And he is versatile. He is pretty dangerous in the passing game. Another dead zone I see is around that 5th, 6th. I could be wrong again on James Conner. I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I do not like DeAndre Swift at all. I know he's their guy and they're paying him, but I don't know if he's going to be the goal line back. I don't think he'll have maybe a solidified role as the goal line back. They'll work in others like Roshan. I'm not even sure he's going to be the 3rd down back. I don't know what is. I mean, I guess he's the early down back for sure, the lead guy. I'm not feeling it. It does kind of fall off a cliff. So it's kind of, to me, like I'm either going to get that one anchor running back and not worry about it for a while, or I'm going to go with the 2 running backs and then I'm not getting my 3rd for a long ass time either. So I'm in on the running backs, but only to an extent, I'd say.
Okay. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I don't think dead zones are real because I legitimately, genuinely believe every season is its own unique, special snowflake. Like, what if Bijan Robinson was in the dead zone range? That's no longer a dead zone. That's your must draft Bijan range. So I'm sure there is a dead zone. It's just read my draft guide and it's
just dead for me because the player's going off the board I don't like. That's all. It's just dead for
exactly.
Me.
No, yeah. That's how I view it as well. But you see all this research diving into like macro historical data. Never draft a running back in round 6 through 8 because the last 5 years there's never blah blah blah. So I'm with you. I think it's interesting you mentioned Kenneth Walker, and so historically, John, when there's a player I like and you don't like, or a player you like and I don't like, we're batting 50-50. It's just 50-50 across the board. When there's a player you and I both like, we're batting 1,000. Rachaad White last year, we were all in on him as our must draft running back. That really worked out well for us. A number of other players like that. Yeah. And so I like to hear that we're aligned on Kenneth Walker. I was worried this was just like personal bias, but I was saying months ago that I think there's a chance that Kenneth Walker is an every down bell cow back. I think he's one of the most underrated running backs in football. This is maybe some bias from my prospect models that like thought he was a generational runner, that thought Zach Charbonnet was massively overrated. You said you think there's upside to him as a pass catcher. You think he's underrated there. I can't agree more. But that's a hot take. Like in the Twitter streets, people think he sucks as a pass catcher and Zach Charbonnet is amazing when guess what? Kenneth Walker had more receiving yards on like 5 fewer targets than Charbonnet last year. And what have you heard through training camp? I know you're a big vibes guy, John. Is there better vibes on any other running back? It's off the charts. It's, this guy's going to get the ball a ton. We like him as an every down player. We think he's underrated as a pass catcher. We want to get him the ball in space, blah, blah, blah. He's going to have a huge year. And so I'm worried I'm just triple counting things now because I was kind of already baking that in to start. But I'm with you. I'm really excited about Kenneth Walker. I think this offense also takes a big step under Ryan Grubb, and most people are suspect that's going to be in the passing game, but
Right.
don't discount what he's done with like nobody running backs when he was at Washington. And don't discount the fact that the head coach, a former defensive coordinator, is like old school, and all he's talking about is wanting to pound the rock. So yeah, I'm with you. I envision a big year for Kenneth Walker. Keep
in mind that this regime, Zach Charbonnet, let's just go to Zach Charbonnet. I thought he was kind of a jag. I mean, let's be honest. Again, this regime did not draft Charbonnet. I thought he would be a little bit better. I wasn't a big Charbonnet guy last year, but I thought he would be better. And maybe he was hurt. He kind of was a jag. So what are we looking at here? New staff coming in. Is Charbonnet going to force Walker off the field? Maybe a little on third down. Kenny McIntosh. I mean, yeah, Ken Walker he's got to be in the 275 to 300 touch total here if he plays 15 games this year. So very good ROI, very good pick as an RB2.
So as we're rocking and rolling here on this kind of draft manifesto show, we're going to talk wide receivers here. And listen, the first round, we know the studs. We just talked about them earlier in the show, you know, the Tyreek Hills, the Justin Jeffersons, and all that other world. But then you get into round two, okay? You took your stud in round one. Maybe it's running back, maybe receiver. You go into round two. And now we're like, all right, well, do I want to pull the trigger? Is Marvin Harrison Jr. going to be a guy? You know, Devontae Adams, he's got Gardner Minshew as his quarterback. Drake London's never done it before in Atlanta. Chris Olave, I got to count on Derek Carr. A lot of question marks here, guys. And you can just go a few rounds later, and I'm like, shoot, I like Jalen Waddle. I like Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith. I mean, there's a lot of guys you can wait around on and get. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I'm liking some of these later guys better than round two. And Scott, you've kind of alluded to that in your Anatomy of a League Winner article.
Yeah, that's right. I also talked to Abib Agbatoba, one of the best high stakes players in fantasy football history. And he was saying like one of the keys to FFPC drafts this year is like, he feels like everything just comes down on who you take in rounds 2 through 4. And it's like so tricky because that range just feels so incredibly flat. Yeah. And I agree. You know, if you look at my draft guide, I have a number of wide receivers ranking in the top 25 overall of my rankings who are going round 4, going round 6.
Right.
And so it's weird. Yeah. It's like, do you take my, wide receiver 8 where I have him ranked? Probably not, when you can get him around later and you're still reaching around. So, you know, you get him, but you get that better value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little worried about some of these guys in that range as well, but I do have put the flag down on Drake London. Now, I do think they could be a little slow out of the gate here and off the mark with Kirky, I guess, not playing in the preseason. Schedule I looked at, it's actually not wonderful. So yeah, round 2 is a little tricky, but I kind of, I guess to your point, Scott, I keep looking at the guys I'm really into, and I'm like, I kind of like these guys a little bit more than the guys going off the board in round number 2, like Olave. You know, I mean, Olave is in my article. I mean, on one hand, he stands out. You know, he's a clear alpha dog here. Mm-hmm. He's the one. There is no doubt about it. And he's got a professional quarterback in Derek Carr. Seems like the vibes are okay, but he's also freaking Derek Carr. So Olave could get card, as I say. And then Marvin Harrison, you know, look, I'll take a chance on the big role and obviously his pedigree and all that. But man, I really like the 3rd, 4th rounders. Debo, I'm finding myself in the draft plan article. I'm taking Debo left and right because I'm seeing a little bit of an opportunity with Ayuk's future, obviously up in the air. And look, could come back to bite me a little bit if Ayuk doesn't go anywhere. I like DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Devontae Smith. So yeah, it's a fine line between getting involved in, you know, this great wide receiver depth, but not going crazy, you know, with it either. And that's another reason why I'm a little bit more inclined to balance it out. I would say ideally for me, a draft would start through 5 rounds. I've got only 3 wide receivers, and I have a couple of running backs, with the exception, maybe instead of having the 2 running backs, it's not a priority, not a lock, I have to have it. Maybe I go tight end. So that would be an alternative. Either 3 wide receivers and 2 backs, or 3 wide receivers, 1 back, ideally an anchor guy like Bijan or Brees, and then a tight end, a stud one, like maybe a Trey McBride.
You know what's funny is I keep referencing this draft. I did big industry draft. Your boy JJ Zacharyson was in it. Scott, I sat next to Jeff Retcliffe. I had that 102. You just mentioned my 2 starting wide receivers in that league, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel. So like all I did, everybody out there who wants to have a big draft in the next 2 weeks, you don't need a computer, right? You don't need to sit there with a laptop. Go to fantasypoints.com, use code SCOREMORE, save 10% off a subscription. Just download and print out that cheat sheet like I did. I had 13 nerds sitting around me with laptops. I'm the only guy, pen and paper, just cross the names off. Bing, bam, boom. I don't need a laptop to tell me who to draft. I can do it myself. And thanks to the Guru Rankings. We need that drop. I need the Guru Rankings, man. I had it, and it was a blast.
But you may not be a nerd, but you kind of do look like an old head out there.
Good.
Like Fred Flintstone with your hard copy cheat sheet.
I loved it. Didn't matter at all. I'll sit there working that hangover. I probably could have been half the guys in there's fathers, to be honest. But that's the fantasy industry in 2024. You mentioned tight end here. Let's transition to that as we're already 55 minutes into this podcast here. We're at a point now in fantasy football where, oh my God, the tight end is useful. And last year, I think there was something like 6 tight ends finished with double-digit fantasy points per game. Travis Kelce, still a superstar. I never find myself drafting Travis Kelce for whatever reason. You know, Trey McBride came on at the end of last season. He was a stud. Sammy Laporta, budding superstar in Detroit. Maybe the reemergence of Kyle Pitts. So let's see, Scott, if you're doing a 12-team home league against your buddies, we'll call it half-point PPR, do you feel the need to have the advantage with an elite tight end like a Kelce, like a Laporta, like a McBride? Or do you think, you know what, these guys I'm drafted with are, pounding natty lights in the corner. I can still win this league with Evan Ingram and Turd Ferguson and Dalton Kincaid a little later?
Yeah, I wonder if some people reading my draft guide, which again, like if you want to read just one thing and that's it, dominate your league, I think that's what you go with, my draft guide. But you might feel ripped off with the tight end section where I was just kind of like, whatever, just do whatever, who cares? I said, plot out your perfect draft and then find the right round to select a tight end, whichever tight end. And I have my rankings and I
went with more than whatever, just so people know. In my article, I have way more than whatever.
So maybe go with John's or use them both in tandem. But just to talk about the historical significance of the position and how impactful it is. Historically, it's a position wholly without a middle class. I said it's 1 to 2 oligarchs ruling over a vast majority of peasants, where you have peak Travis Kelce, or a few seasons from Mark Andrews, a few seasons from Darren Waller. Before that, it was Rob Gronkowski. These oligarchs ruling over the peasants, and those oligarchs were massively valuable. Kelce was putting up mid-range wide receiver 1 production and outscoring, the tight end 3 by like 40% in terms of fantasy points per game. So it's super valuable. Now with, Travis Kelce, age 35, his usage being diminished, to preserve him, keep him healthy for the postseason, I'm seeing a position without oligarchs, a position without these super valuable tight ends. Right. But now there's an upper class of the position, and the upper class is incredibly deep. Most other analysts have it 7 players deep, but if you want to dig into it, look at every tight end over their last 7 games played last year, include the postseason. Evan Ingram was tight end 1, 18.1 fantasy points per game. David Njoku was 17.2. Jake Ferguson 3, 15.5. You talk about Trey McBride. He was 6th. He was 14 fantasy points per game. And so Evan Ingram, tight end 8 by ADP. Jake Ferguson, tight end 9. David Njoku, tight end 11. So maybe it's actually 11 deep. I don't know. And now you have Brock Bowers, supposedly the greatest tight end prospect ever. You have Kyle Pitts, finally with a competent play caller and a quarterback. Right. To me, it just feels deep. And so again, what I concluded with was whatever. Just whatever. Yeah, the other positions are more impactful. I'm giving you league winners there, and just sort of try and map out your perfect draft based on your draft slot and slide one of those tight ends in there or pick your favorite.
I will have to say, this is my 30th year. Probably my most successful position has been tight end. That probably, I mean, I was 6'2", about 170. So I guess I wouldn't have been a tight end, maybe if I filled out, but if I had my dream come true athletically, I would have been a receiver. That was my skill set. I had very good hands and I could run. But I just have this closeness to the position, I think. I'm like a very, very poor man's version of Kyle Shanahan, like just discouraged receiver who, couldn't make it. But anyways, I agree that the depth is very good. I haven't given up. I'm always, by the way, I again, some of the names, I'm even going back. I think kind of my first tight end sleeper, I don't think I had one in 96 or 5. Was Wesley Walls. I believe it was 97, and I crushed it. I mean, he crushed it. He had like 10 touchdowns that year. Antonio Gates, Jimmy Graham. I know I'm missing a couple there, big ones, but Kelsey. I mean, I was a freaking huge Kelsey guy. So I've had some great ones, and I'm still always looking for that. I don't see like great breakout guys, although Pitts, I'm in. I got to be in again. I was incorrect last year. I felt good about the year before not biting, but he went down to like the 6th round, and the mistake was that, well, number one, we didn't know about the injury and how much of a residual effect it would have. But I failed to recognize like the two biggest roadblocks were freaking Artie Smith and Desmond Ridder, and they were still there last year. Well, they're no longer there. I like Evan Ingram too. I'm always looking, what I was trying to say earlier, the best of both worlds, because I'm greedy. I always say I'm a greedy bastard at tight end. I want a stud, but I want to get them at discount prices. So I always try and find that second or third tier guy. It's been rough, but Evan Ingram was on my list last year. He was one of my top 4 targets. I've been a Jake Ferguson guy from the beginning. If you've read my stuff and heard me on SiriusXM, he's actually the guy. I think he's kind of like my Jordan Love of the quarterback position. And it works out to where many of the drafts you can just load up on running backs and wide receivers until round 7 and 8, and then get Love and Ferguson. I think that is actually the best way to form the best possible lineup, because you're getting impactful starters, I believe, in the 7th and 8th round, when, all the good running backs are long gone, all the good receivers are long gone, because they're already on your roster. That's the point. So there's my thoughts on tight end.
Yeah.
I like that shout out. And I talk about this in Anatomy, is that it doesn't really hurt you too much if you do decide to punt the position. There's not much of a floor from the waiver wire, but there's a massive ceiling. We see this every year. These tight ends basically going undrafted.
Yeah.
Who turn out to be league winners. Last year, it was like all the top 5 best tight end picks you can make, like Trey McBride, free off waivers. Yep. All these tight ends going so super cheap. I do have one must draft tight end, but it depends on the format. Probably not in your home league, but in like an FFPC, which is tight end premium with deep bench, use promo code points for free $25 over at FFPC. We have a sponsorship with them. Would be TJ Hawkinson. I know you're with me on Tyler Conklin. Conklin's like my highest owned tight end in best ball.
Oh, he's my number one pick, sleeper of the year from like literally February.
But I love it. And so like Tyler Conklin plus for the first 6 weeks plus TJ Hawkinson from then on, he could outscore Dalton Kincaid. And he's going, how many rounds later? It is contingent upon you having the IR spot or the bench space, but I really like that. TJ Hawkinson basically tied for best among all tight ends in fantasy points per game last year. Really think that offense just runs through him against Too High, and then Justin Jefferson against everything else. It's one of the most prolific passing volume offenses in football. So I like it.
What if you do that and then you find yourself Hawkinson's back week 7 and you're like, you know what? I can only start one tight end. I know it's FFPC, but let's go with it. And you're like, you know what? I'm actually going Conklin over a healthy Hawkinson. I think that's within the realm of possible outcomes. I am that high on Tyler Conklin.
Wow.
Yeah. You can always trade a tight end, I think. In home leagues, you can't trade a quarterback. I see these guys all the time. They go, oh, I got Mahomes and I'm going to come back and I'm going to have, Anthony Richardson as my QB2 or some nonsense. You can never trade quarterbacks in home leagues because, again, there's everybody has a good one. But I think tight end, if you've got a TJ Hawkinson, you can actually improve your roster somewhere because people are desperate because all the top 12 guys are going to be gone. Trust me with that.
That's true.
I mentioned
I am worried about, obviously, the JJ McCarthy loss to me is a big part of this.
Yeah.
I'm not as high on Hawkinson. Obviously, I was in on McCarthy. I was a believer. I was with Brett Whitefield. I did have him at QB2, not 1, but I was in, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks. It sucks because we got to wait a whole freaking year on JJ McCarthy. You know who I've actually warmed up to? And we were wrong on him last year, unfortunately, but Chiggy. I'm kind of looking at Chiggy again. Well, also because of the DeAndre Hopkins situation. Like, we're going to throw it more. We can't rely on D-Hop. The depth there at receiver isn't all that great. I know his snaps and routes might be a little limited here, but I'm back in on Chiggy a little bit. Not anything earth-shattering. I got him at tight end 21. His ADP is 24. But I also like Isaiah Likely, and I guess more importantly and correspondingly, I am not in on Andrews this year at all. Like, I don't want Mark Andrews this year. Scott, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to move Andrews down a little bit. Like, I don't know that his rankings going to change, but just like the priority target level, because I was really high on him, but like the vibes on Likely are out of control. Jeremy Fowler, Dan Graziano, Albert Breer all said the exact same thing. Like, who is the number 3 receiver after Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers? It's Isaiah Likely.
Yeah. I've been on this for months too. I mean, if you've been listening to these pods, I mean, it's happening.
Well, Likely is one of my guys. I tweeted out that he had, like, according to my prospect model, is like, this is like a generational pass catching tight end. And director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, friend of Fantasy Points, he replied to me like months later and is like, if it weren't like multiple teams had a round 2 grade on him, but that combine killed him. And so you've seen it on the field. Like the talent is there. You get why the vibes are out of control. It's just unfortunate for him. It's like a Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz situation where he's probably not going to be a real fantasy difference maker. And he might just be a thorn in Mark Andrews' side, but maybe a great dynasty stash for, a couple of years from now, or if something happens to Andrews, who's getting up there in age.
Yeah, no doubt. I watched Likely. That was my first Senior Bowl, actually, about 3 years ago now. Dude was separating on the regular, and I was also around him at the combine. Is a good vibe with this guy. It's like an old school, old soul type of guy. Like really, really good. I will throw out one other like really deep one, and this is a guy I did like last year, and it didn't really work out. But I look at the depth chart, and I'm like, I'm wondering aloud, maybe he has a chance here in New Orleans. Like, I like Rashid Shaheed last year, but he made some plays, but I don't know. He's just kind of there. A.T. Perry seems to be limiting. The depth there at receiver is not good. I know he's on PUP. I don't know what the deal is, but Juwan Johnson, I thought, if you're digging deep, like 20 rounds, getting a third tight end, FFPC, I might throw Juwan Johnson out there.
Yeah, you look how he finished the year. Let's see, this was week 15 on. Juwan Johnson was really productive. 11.8 points, 14.8, 23 points. And then, 7 in the final week of the season, but that was week 18, doesn't matter for fantasy. So, yeah, Juwan Johnson was helping people win fantasy titles last year. Good call on that, John.
Freaking Derek Carr, though, because the year before, Juwan Johnson was really good, even longer, for a longer period of time, and I do think Carr likes him and trusts him, but He also is Derek Carr. You could also screw him. But yeah, I'm going to put my name behind that one. But again, we're talking 200, well over 200 picks in.
You know who's sitting on my IR spot in that Kings Classic League? Juwan Johnson. It's John. It's like we're sharing a brain here, brother. We're sharing a brain.
Yeah.